Good evening and welcome to the Monday, June 13, Muscatine School District Board of Education meeting. Madam Secretary, can you please take roll and help us determine the quorum, please?
Sure. Director Connard?
Here.
Cooney?
Here.
Director DeBeat?
Here.
Director LaRue?
Here.
Director Morgan?
Here.
Director Phillips?
Here.
And Director Short.
Here.
Quorum is present.
Thank you. Pledge of the Allegiance is next, and tonight the 8th grade class at Susan Clark Junior High will lead us in the pledge. Please stand. Thank you, Susan Clark Junior High, 8th grade. Thank you. Right now, the next item is citizen speak. If anyone in the audience wants to address the board, please step to the podium, state your name and address. You will have 3 minutes per board policy. We cannot respond or engage in any discussion. Obviously, we don't have any citizens here, but it's still part of the agenda. With this, we move into next item on our agenda, which is the board targets goals report. Item A, students will graduate prepared for post-secondary options. Item B, Muscatine schools will utilize resources effectively and equitably. And under that, we have one item, which is the facilities presentation. And item C, students will learn in a positive and supportive environment. With that, I think Ryan is ready for us.
John, I'm not sure ready is the right thing, but we are ready to go here. So tonight I have for you guys a facility proposal that would utilize save revenue bonds or a save revenue bond to accomplish our goals here. So getting into this, we created a plan that we wanted to develop a plan that addressed all areas of our district. So we looked at elementary level, junior high level, high school, athletics, fine arts, and then some handicap accessibilities that were lacking. So to do that, we looked at, we want quality learning spaces for our students. We want secure environments for our students. We want to make sure that our building conditions are up to date and that the condition of them is in good shape. We want to make sure that we're addressing any enrollment changes that we're projecting going forward. And that we want to make sure that we're also addressing core spaces. So not only classrooms, but also gyms, cafeterias, some of our other fine arts, co-curricular athletics stuff. And then we also want to make sure that we focus on permanent construction. We don't want any temporary things going on. We want to get rid of that and away from that. So with Leggett Architects, we put together a project planning agenda for you guys, which includes some site plans, some floor plans, cost estimates, and some basic timelines. We're going to start tonight with Susan Clark. So for Susan Clark, our proposal would be to first start with addressing some athletic concerns at that site. So we would look to add a 6,000 square foot competition gym, some storage, locker rooms, some additional toilets, and some custodial closets. So that's in the back of the site in that building, which I'll show you guys here in a second. We'd look at adding a new controlled, secure entrance to the front. If you look at the front of Susan Clark, there's multiple doors to enter the building. We want to make sure that we address and show a main entrance to the building for people looking at. That would also include some just front facade improvements. We're looking at resurfacing the track so it can be utilized all the time instead of the cinder track that it is now. And then we'd also look at a separate entrance onto school grounds instead of just having the one entrance off of Kindler. So that project it would be approximately a $7 million project. The design phase would begin next month, going through the beginning of next year, and then we could start construction as early as April of 2023, and that's going to be not quite a year-long process, about a 10-month process to build. So just so you guys can kind of get a general idea of what we're looking at here, so you can see the gym space off the back of the building here. So that's those two competitions. It's very similar in size to the Van Heck Center gym area. And then the front entrance obviously would be up at the front where the main entrance is now, but just to delineate that as a better entrance site to the building. Questions about Susan Clark, really quick?
Second entrance?
So, okay, so second entrance would be going out the back of the parking lot and then exiting on Dawson.
You're not talking about an entrance to the building.
No, I'm talking about a separate entrance onto campus. Now, I want to preface that, like, this is not like an entrance that's open all the time. This is a road designated for bus traffic, open simply in the morning for a half-hour space, afternoon for a half-hour space. The rest of the time, that would be gated and shut. This is just to help alleviate some of that traffic flow before and after school for us.
So that'd be similar to, would have a gate similar to Bonnie Drive?
Correct.
And the city's all right with us connecting to Dawson?
They are willing to give us a curb cut permit, yes.
Okay.
Ryan, how does that alleviate traffic on Kindler with the elementary school and buses also? Like, does it?
So in that, like, the 3 o'clock, 3:05 range, all our buses are going one way. So it's much easier for traffic flow. We're not blocking. There's a bus lane that we set off. And at McKinley, we have 4 total buses after school. So it's very limited in the amount of bus traffic that we have. Whereas Susan Clark, we have 22 buses before and after school. So it gets much more congested, especially when we have buses going both ways on Kindler versus just a one-way traffic flow.
Yeah, that line ends up down Fulham.
Yes,
So
very
that
easily.
would help with that.
And also, I'm looking at a safety aspect too. Like our buses, it's hard to see, if you've ever driven a bus or been in, like, it's hard to see pedestrians. So if we can eliminate them pulling back onto the street or in the front of the building where there's the vast majority of our foot traffic, it's going to be safer for everyone.
And Ryan, so all buses will be going through that special entrance
Correct.
in and out, right?
Correct, yep,
Thank you.
that is correct.
No private vehicles, no parents going out?
No,
Just-
that we would eliminate, we'd make sure that we have staff members there to eliminate that after school, like with dismissal, and then with it being gated the rest of the time, we should be able to eliminate a lot of private use of that.
So what are the parents expected to do if they have their own vehicle coming to pick up the children?
So right now, we wouldn't change their dismissal. They pull into the front of the building in what used to be the bus lane. So we would maintain that flow of traffic up front, but with alleviating all those buses, it should help our traffic flow a little bit.
Will you talk to the current usage of the gym and why the additional space may be needed?
Yeah, absolutely. So if Susan Clark has a great problem. We have a ton of students that are out for activities, and with that comes an extreme lack of practice facilities on site. So over the last 2 years, we've transported kids to Jefferson for practice, to Central Middle School for practice, to McKinley for practice. Makes it really hard for them not only to maintain that many coaches for their various sites, but also just facility usage. We're starting to run into the time where we have to bump some of our outside user groups at some of our other facilities to accommodate practice. So this should be able to accommodate all of our practices on site, which will help those programs.
And I believe that there are classrooms that are doubling too as some kind of like practice or activity space for
Yeah,
those
so
extracurriculars.
it's a bad drawing, but this space right here is being currently used as our wrestling room. So we would be able to eliminate that from that usage and turn it back into a different classroom type of environment.
So this building and it says 6,000 square feet. Is it 2 full courts, 1 full court?
2 full courts.
Two full courts?
It's almost identical in size to the Van Heck Center gym.
So would we utilize portable bleachers to put in there for competition?
That would be my suggestion, is that we utilize portable bleachers just like we do in the Van Heck Center instead of a permanent
Yeah.
fixture.
And then whereabouts would the wrestling room be? Because that'd be attached in the.
So
right?
what we'd be looking at, either designating up half of the gym for that wrestling room, or we could look at changing the site plan a little bit to add a separate room to that. Does that make sense, Denny?
Yeah. I guess when we talked about it in the facilities committee, that it was talked about that if it'd be similar to the Van Heck building, where we have the weight room, that would be where the wrestling room.
And as we looked at that, I wanted to make sure we were being fiscally responsible. So I also wanted to make sure we have multi-purpose facilities. So that kind of went away in respects to ensuring that we have the 2 full-size competition gyms. If that's something that you want me to look at, we can surely look at that again.
It could even be a temporary wall space that we could fold in the off-season, but that way it's still designated to what it needs to be for the appropriate months. What about parking?
So right now, there's no plan to increase parking at the site. We haven't had, like, as far as staffing goes, we haven't had any issues with parking. I know that it gets tight for some of our performances, but I'm not sure those few and far between performances would dictate adding additional parking to that site for those 5 or 6 times a year that they have.
Say that to the parents and grandparents that have to walk a long way.
I'm there. I understand.
Well, and I don't know if you're pouring concrete anyway, if it even makes sense to just do it all at once. It may lower some costs in the long run. I'm just thinking of a basketball game and a wrestling practice occurring at the same time.
Yeah, and like I said, that's something, if we want to, I can definitely look at that. And the concrete is just not cheap right
No,
now.
it's not.
Ryan, what happened to the old wrestling room?
So the old wrestling room was
Right there,
here.
right.
So we turned that into our band and orchestra room.
Gotcha. I remember. Okay, I
2
remember
years
that.
ago, I believe.
Because the band orchestra used to be
Band orchestra used to incorporate 2 full classrooms. We've now incorporated them into one space that they share. It was a better use of space for the building.
And then you took the old shop area and made that into the wrestling room.
Correct.
I remember.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I don't know if it's a temporary building or not, but there's a shed that's currently being used as a locker room. Is that
That would
goes
would
away
go
then,
away.
or it has
Yes.
another use?
No, that would go away.
So, talking about the locker rooms, is 400 square foot locker rooms big enough? I mean, what do we have, what are this right there now?
Yeah, what's the purpose of the 400 square foot locker room?
That should theoretically give us enough space for about 40 kids, about 10 square feet per kid.
What are the dimensions of the locker rooms now?
Denny, I don't know. I'd have to go in and measure it.
I don't remember. They're not very big.
They're very small.
I would hope that they would be bigger than 20 by 20.
Yeah. Yes. and we can look, like, again, this is initial rollout. If you guys want to look at something different, we
One
for
of
sure
the things we'll have to do, just in a timeline of this process, is before you can approve and you as a board have the authority to leverage those dollars, right, for this. But before that can happen, we have to have a public hearing. We'll have to we'll have to present plans and specifications. So there'll have to be a lot more details to the drawings, to the design, and we'll work with the junior high on that to make sure that they have what they need. We need wrestling space, but they're only going to use it for, a portion of the year. So can we create a space, call it multi-purpose during the wrestling season? That's what it is. During, summer, if they want to do some wrestling work in there, they can, right? But how do we create a flexible space that allows for that? So there'll be a lot of conversations yet to come on this.
And, this would also be used not just for extracurricular activities, but it'd be used for a phys ed facility.
Yes.
And I know in talking with the phys ed teachers about this plan, they're enthusiastic about it. Hopefully that, because right now, if you had 3 classes at the same time, you got everybody in the big gym, and that's like, could be 80 to 100 kids in the big gym, regular gym. Well, this would alleviate that. So I think we need to talk about it as a educational facility also.
And you double the size of your locker rooms because you're putting all 80 of those kids in the 2 small locker rooms they currently have.
Right.
Which is a safety issue in my mind, but it's what we got.
The other thing that this does for us, it enables us to use the small gym in a different manner than we're currently using it.
Right.
And
Cafeteria.
Ryan, I have a quick question because I think Lindsay mentioned the parking or asked about the parking, and my kids goes to Susan Clark, and I know the building very well, and I'm thinking if we are opening that special route for the buses to get in and out, and you said we'll have a gate, but can we use that after school as a parking spot where cars can park their cars if we have overflow of cars?
I suppose we could. I would probably advise against that, just because it opens another avenue for people using that when they're not supposed to.
Okay.
That would be my advice. Obviously we can do whatever you can do with that, whatever you'd like.
So I'm just thinking of parking spots in case if we have overflow of parking, since we will have that route, so it can be used as an extra parking. But
The other thing that we do look at is over the next few years, enrollment at Susan Clark does go down. So as we're looking at some of those events, we're probably looking at less kids, less families attending them. So hopefully parking won't be as big of an issue as it is now, where it's probably as high as it's been in a number of years.
So where that building, where that building is, that'd be attached or not attached?
So this is showing an attached building. Again,
Right.
not necessarily does it have to be attached. We could do it as a separate building off the back.
Where's the geothermal located?
Right in between them.
Okay.
Right here. Yep. So.
Right, I'm kind of like with the parking as well, but I know cement and everything costs quite a bit, needless to say, to be able to do and that. But if there is a way to even a little bit of different parking space or something, especially if you've got family and grandparents and stuff that may need more that's considered a handicap parking, spot when they're coming to see some of these events and stuff like that. So just to keep that in mind.
Absolutely.
So events that would happen in the new gym area, people would be expected to walk through the Susan Clark School to get to that?
So we're not putting any entrances on the backside of the building. Probably going to enter in the same spot they do now and just walk down that main hallway to get to that.
Yeah.
Back on the road, do we look at connecting to Cook Street right there at all?
We did, so I have looked at that. The issue with Cook Street is it's an extremely narrow street, and in order to get...
It's not a street.
It's more of an alley.
And the city I think has zoned that as an alley because when they were doing work, they opened that up and traffic was great, but the city is the one that said, no, this has to be temporary because it's not considered, and I could be misspeaking, but if I remember correctly, it wasn't considered a street, it was considered an alley, and if you made it a throughway, then they had to maintain it and turn it into a street, so it made it difficult.
Ask them why it's called Cook Street.
I know,
I hear you, Mike.
but I
hear
think that was part of it was because the zone, I don't think that that's actually considered a street. I think it's considered an alley.
And if that's something that you want me to look in, I can for sure look into that.
Go ahead, Matt.
the one other would just, and I know we're going to get to this on, I believe, the Madison one. What's going in a 2,500 square foot
So
entrance? Because I saw on the further we'll
yeah,
get to it. Was
right. So what we're looking at is like a dual vestibule type of option, office space for the main office to be into. So and outside of that, there's not a whole heck of a lot else that goes into this besides some office space and a secured entrance. It's expensive because there's a lot of glass and there's a lot of electronics for those secured entrances.
I think it also really makes that, one of the issues with Susan Clark, it is kind of hard to tell exactly where the front entrance is because there could be 2 spots. This makes it really clear when you get to the front of the building where you're headed, right? and we'll direct folks that way and just really kind of open that front part up a little bit more.
So what kind of glass is it? Because if I hear secure entrance, everything is getting a little bit more glass added to it, like everywhere. How is that the safest option?
So when you have a laminated glass, it is a pretty strong substance.
Okay.
Now, again, it's a design feature. It's very popular right now. We don't have to go in that way. I like it. I like the looks of that.
It looks beautiful. I just don't imagine it stopping much if somebody wanted to enter the building, right? Is it
You'd be
special glass?
you'd be
I don't-
surprised.
Surprise.
You'd be surprised. You can get basically bulletproof glass for relatively cheap.
Can you drive a vehicle through it?
I suppose you could if you had
Going
if you
fast
wanted to.
enough.
But
Yeah. But I am more speaking to the bulletproof glass. I mean,
that's the main thing with this is we want any like secured entrances. We want them to be secure. That is the
Right.
purpose of that. So if we have to sacrifice some glass for something else, we will. But the point of that is to make that entrance a secure entrance where they have to go through. They're going to be seen before they get into our buildings.
I think most school shootings, people aren't shooting their way in, so glass is probably.
Again, it comes down, if we're looking at the security of our buildings, we need to make sure that our doors are shut. We need to make sure that we have staff being vigilant and that we are addressing those needs as they come up or those issues as they arise.
And as we talk about secured entrances, we are meeting with the Muscatine Police Department. We're talking about those components. We're in the process of writing a federal grant for some additional security things around secured entrances as well. So those are all part of the conversation as we design those pieces.
And another thing, I think when the engineering company look at this, they might also suggest some changes too, because I remember with the Van Heck Center, we had discussion about attached or detached kind of center, and it came much better deal if we had it as detached. It was much cheaper than having an attached building to the original building, so that's why we went with that route too. So
And that is generally the case. A detached building is generally cheaper than having it be attached.
yeah.
All right. So gonna go ahead and move on to my next building here. So that I combined Jefferson Elementary and Central Middle School together on this site. So what we're looking at with this school site is we're looking at demolishing the front of Central Middle School, creating a new entrance to that building with some additional parking, which we know is an issue there, doing a fairly small facelift of the gym and auditorium. The structure of both of those facilities is very good, but it does need updated. We create a new addition to Jefferson Elementary, which would incorporate 9 classrooms, and that's to offset some of our capacity issues that we're seeing at McKinley and Madison Elementary School. We then create a connection to the gym and auditorium from Jefferson into the current central building like it was before. Project cost for this is approximately $8 million. So again, we're looking at a design, same time frame as Susan Clark, July to February, and then again construction from April to February. So virtually the same construction window as well for this. To look at this is an overview of both sites. So the blue highlight here is the area of the building that would get demolished and taken down for our new entrance and parking. The brown or tan is the gym, bathrooms, some locker rooms, some storage, and then we have the auditorium here. This is cut so that the elevator in Central stays, so that we don't have some of those ADA compliance issues that we would have to create an elevator anyways. And then the classroom addition goes out the back of Jefferson and then connects virtually where the old one connected at. So if we look at that, to give you a better idea of what the classroom space is going to look like. This is, and I apologize for it's a little bit blurrier than I thought, or my eyes are causing me issues. So you have the gym space here. There's those locker rooms. So there's that hallway that comes down in front of the locker rooms, and then the back, this hallway here is the back of the auditorium, that foyer area. So we'd have a 1-story, 9-classroom addition to the back of Jefferson, which would enable us to create a true 4-section building at Jefferson. We're able to pull some small areas of town away from Madison, away from McKinley, to make that happen. This would also enable us to put some of our special programs at this building if necessary.
I just add in there, again, going back to that enrollment study that we showed you, when you look at a heat map of where our students live, Jefferson is in the bullseye. So as we talk about and we have land space here in order to do this. We don't always have the land space at our other buildings to be able to add this addition and the core space that comes along with this to do that. So this really is an ideal location for this, both from a facility standpoint, but also from an enrollment standpoint.
So without rabbit trailing too much, roughly, are we talking roughly 600 kids, 700 kids?
So this would be a 4-section building.
Right.
So
And this eliminates.
6 to 7.
600 to 700 kids. Are we thinking an assistant principal?
Yeah, I think at that point you have an assistant principal.
That's why I said I don't want to go too far down that track until things come to fruition. But if we're gonna, I like the idea of having more sections, bigger buildings with more sections. But I also think from a safety standpoint, we probably have to have more teachers and more administrators to that point. So,
And there's economy in
least move 'em.
size, right? So when you have more than 2 sections and you get into that 4th section and you have those fluctuations in enrollment, it has a lot less impact than it does when you have 2 or 3. Right? You're going to have a lot more of those bubble classes in those 2 and 3 section buildings. It's just the way it is, right? But again, we're not looking at giant elementary here, right? This would be a typical, in a lot of places, this is a typical size elementary building, so.
Where on that map is the elevator?
Oh, I'm sorry. So currently,
it's
the elevator sits right off of this
yeah, that's
hallway.
what I
It's
thought.
right there. So I cut off the picture
Right.
a little bit so there's that hallway that runs down here.
Right.
And there's, it basically incorporate that hallway and one bank of classrooms
Okay.
there to incorporate the elevator and give us some additional storage.
We go back one.
Yeah,
Just
absolutely.
and just, where's the central kitchen today, if you could remind me?
So, okay, so currently the kitchen is right here in Central.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions with Central Jefferson?
Just that it seems, okay, the Susan Clark was 7 million, but you're indicating 8 million for here. And is that mostly because of what has to do to take away the structure and then parking area? So why the,
That's a great question, Karen, but it's because your core space, so you think about a Van Heck Center, right? A lot of that is just wall and open space. Classrooms all require wiring, and I mean, there's just a lot more that goes into a classroom. So the cost to build those classrooms is significantly higher.
I have 2 questions. So this is eliminating those mobile classrooms ideally, right, at Madison?
This eliminates the mobile classrooms at Madison.
Within the timeline that we have?
Correct.
And then then my second question is the new controlled entrance. So Jefferson has a controlled entrance. Where are we adding an additional entrance?
Did I have that in this
The
one?
main entrance would still be the main entrance.
It
has-
says Jefferson ES, new controlled entrance addition. On your bullet points.
Oops,
Go
I'm sorry.
back. Next one. If you go down to your picture there, and those bullet points.
Okay, I apologize.
Oh, that's okay.
I think it
was
might
just
be
an
the
error.
connecting
Oh,
corridor.
I'm sorry, new controlled entrance is the front of Central. So as we tear that down, we have to create a new entrance to that
Okay.
building. So I apologize. So that is that new entrance there. We want to make sure we have a controlled entrance at the beginning, at that building as we tear down that one section. So we'll have a big opening there that would need an entrance.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to have to pose the question, and that is because I am a theater person and did many theater in there. And I know we have indicated in the past that we have not or do not at this time wish to be able to do any allocation of funds that would take and do anything for the theater, but we want to preserve the theater. And so that's a discussion at a later time, as in what or may happen to the theater and gym area.
Yeah, so there are some dollars in just kind of updating it. So it's paint, it's flooring, a little bit about probably the stage area, but it's not a complete overhaul. That doesn't mean we're not going to assume specific community donations for any of these projects. Have there been some conversations around that? Yes, so that may happen, but we're not assuming that in any of these budgets. So again, it's not a complete overhaul of that space, but it is an update to that space.
I would be interested to see what that looks like. Thank you.
And even as we've had architects and other folks through that space, it's a great space, right? I mean, the bones are solid. There's a lot of great features to it already. Again, when you get into just some basic updates to it, would go a long way.
And the sound system needs definite updating, but yes, I agree with you on the overview of it. Thank you.
All right. So next thing on our list is the baseball softball complex. So what we are in discussions with is incorporating Diamond 1 at Kent Stein Park and Tom Bruner Field to create our a standalone baseball softball complex. So with this, we would be looking at fencing off those two diamonds as one complex, where the horseshoe pits are located in the back here. We'd create additional parking back there. And then our agreement with the city would be to build a replacement diamond for them that's equivalent in size to Diamond 1 in this area. It's an open grassy area behind here, and then where the parking is indicated here, new horseshoe pits for them to replace those as well. We'd have to reroute the bike path that runs through the two diamonds here. But then that project would be approximately a $4 million project, including the updates that are necessary to do to Bruner as we move forward. This is also, like, we would own this. This would be ours, to schedule ours to update and upkeep. So I know that that's important for us as we move forward. Again, phase 2 in this, so we're looking at March to August for design, construction October to July. Questions on this?
What type of surface are you looking at for the new softball diamond?
So right now, this is a natural grass surface. Again, up for debate if we wanted to go to an artificial surface. I know that there's been discussion about that and leaning towards that direction.
And that's one of those pieces too that can be an alternative bid, and depending on how everything comes back in, maybe it fits in and maybe it doesn't, or maybe that's where there's some additional donations that help support the additional cost of that.
I think there's also grant money. I think it's called a Miracle Field. So if you start to incorporate special education or Special Olympics events on that site, so something to look into. I think.
Mike, are you talking the softball section?
Yeah,
or
the softball side of
softball
it.
section. Because I would say it's been very clear to me that they want to maintain the history of Bruner Field as much as possible. So in doing that, I want to make sure that we're cognizant of maintaining that historical field.
So they don't want anything to do with or turf on.
No, and they want the wood fence. They want to keep that
Yeah.
wood fence. They want to keep that old time look to the facility. Obviously, with changing out the backstops to make it a more visitor friendly park, and changing the dugouts to make sure that they're appropriate. So we would have to build some batting cages in between, shared batting cages. We'd have a shared concession stand down there, which is we don't have now. New bathrooms, which would make it a much more,
Maintaining the wood bleachers so you can get splinters.
that would be some new bleachers in there, Mike.
So, I know this is the preliminary things. Are we talking, I would like to see netting for backstop area.
That is a part of
Included in
this.
that?
Is netting is for the backstop.
And just from being the next coach down there, when I first started coaching, we played on Diamond One. It's a sun field for right field and first base, so that's going to have to be rotated. I would not want to play.
We've talked about that as well.
And I mean, we'd have to look and see where to put it at as far as rotation wise. And also, because you're going to move it anyway, that's why I would say that you're going to have to tear it up and do stuff. That's what I would personally like to see turf on that.
Yeah, initial conversations put home plate here,
Okay.
where my cursor is, which sets it up the same as Diamond 4 is now.
Okay.
Ryan, there had been some community discussions about the softball field being at the high school. Why is that not something?
So
Look at.
my thing about the softball complex at the high school is great spot, beautiful location. 5 years from now, we're still talking about the same thing with baseball. We're still going to have to update Bruner. We still have to do a lot of things down there. And personally, I'd like to see it at the same location. I think it gives us some ability to have multi-use batting cages, multi-use concession stand, instead of doubling up those expenses at each location. Either way, I think this is a more economical choice for us.
Did we price it at the high school?
Yes, I have it priced at the high school too.
And what was the difference?
Approximately $1 million, I think, if I remember correctly.
I think the initial design, just the softball field down here was 2.1, and I want to say the high school was 2.3. It was a little more expensive. But again, I think there were components of each one that were probably missing. So at some point, we had to make a decision as to a recommendation. I think, again, the key factors are when those, either way we went, we need to do something with the softball field. You have issues with the baseball field that need to be addressed. When you're putting money into a facility that you don't own the land on is problematic. This allows us to kind of finalize all of that. We'll own the land for both. We do have some shared facilities down there which will help save on costs. And when you drive up to that, there's Muscatine High School softball and baseball field. So that was the...
I do like the visibility to our youth programming too, that they're going to be there often and seeing it, and you kind of just move up in the fields. I think that's a neat progression.
And it's more fan-friendly.
It is.
You can attend both baseball and softball at the same time, and right now you can't, or you can, but you're going to be Shane Moss and be on a bicycle riding back and forth.
So have there been conversations with the city about relocating that gate?
Oh,
Because if they close Kent Stein, you have one access to Diamond One.
So yeah, I have taught. We would have entrance into both of those diamonds, even if the rest of Kent Stein was closed.
Okay.
You'd still be able to go in through Bruner then, because there's no fence on the inside of that. So you'd go into the Bruner entrance and still be able to get
Right.
You still have to
But
get
you're
the
losing all
parking.
that parking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had initial conversations about that, and I don't foresee an issue with that.
Okay.
How many parking spots would you get by removing the horseshoe pits?
I believe we could get 40 to 60 back here, which would help significantly. I know parking is an issue down there.
Because this fence is going as well.
So is part of this the intent and also wish to help, because we know that each year there always is concerns as in who gets to be able to use the diamonds and such too?
Owning the facility gives us exclusive rights to who, when, how they're utilized. That's going to help us a lot. That's one of the things that we have an issue with is every time we put money into Diamond 4, that is a multi-use facility. We do not control the use for that. There's multiple teams that use that. This would enable us to maintain it just like I do the football stadium, just like I do anything else on the Van Heck Center, anything else that is on our property would give us exclusive rights to that and the ability to control that.
Just the other day, the highest, we got rained out. The park did close, so another diamond was not playable for the City League. So they went and used the high school diamond after we got rained out. So that's a problem. So this would alleviate that, hopefully. And how high is that fence going to be?
I don't have those specs right now,
Okay.
Denny.
I mean, with that being in there, you're going to have people, you're everywhere, no matter where it's located, you're going to have somebody climbing that fence and trying to get in there and use that.
Most of the fences that I'm looking at now for surrounding our facilities are minimum 8 foot. Again, you're not going to, if somebody wants to climb a fence,
Right,
they're
they're
going
gonna
to
get
climb
in.
a fence. I would love to go back and instead of around the football stadium with the 4 foot fence, do a little bit higher one. But again, it's not going to stop people from getting in if they want.
So this doesn't, obviously it doesn't have anything as far as dugout designs or anything like that. That comes in the future.
That comes in the future, correct. I just wanted to make sure that we got this in front of you guys as soon as we could as we're working on those specifics moving forward so that you guys have an idea what we're talking about, umbrella look at this.
As facility committee continues to meet, which Denny and I are both part of those meetings, will we be inviting people or will you have side conversations with those that all of these projects affect so that they're able to?
Absolutely. We're going to involve all these stakeholders in these discussions to make sure that we're doing what we need to do for those individuals, those groups.
Yeah. And I assume that timeline moves fairly quickly when you look at these dates, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. And that's kind of why, the design feature, it seems like a 4-month, 5-month time period. It seems like a long time, but that goes very quickly. And that stakeholder conversations are going to happen very quickly as that ramps up to make sure that we're ready to send that out for bid.
Yeah. I would say don't be scared to call too many meetings so that we know we're getting it done right the first time.
And I would say a lot of that work gets done in those smaller groups of the buildings and sites and programs that it impacts. And then we're bringing it back to you to share, here's where we're at with things.
Perfect.
So have you, Ryan, talked with Musco about possibility of making these 2 showcase diamonds for them?
Jason and I have been in contact on a
Okay.
number of occasions, yes. So he's well aware of what we'd like to do moving forward.
Okay.
So. All right. So moving on, back down to our elementary buildings. So again, Madison removing those portable classrooms as a part of this option, and then creating a new secured entrance at the front of the building. Again, Madison is another one of those buildings that has multiple entrances off of the front of the street. The other issue with Madison is as soon as you're in the front door, you're in the entire school. So this would eliminate that completely for that to happen. So again, new offices, new secured entrance, cameras, key card access, all of those things that come with that secured entrance. Again, approximately a $2.5 million project here. Design again as a part of phase 2, so March to August, and then construction October to July.
Does that work with them being in school?
So that's one of the great things with this is it'd be very similar to when we did the STEM edition. You have a very limited impact on the school itself, and then any cuts that would need to go into the school would happen over the summer.
Okay.
I would hope we could expedite as quickly as possible those secure entrances. I think that's probably priority number one that we need to do in light of the things that have been happening around the nation.
Yeah, and this was just initial conversations with our architects. We can change phases, we can flip things, however that the board sees fit. At Grant, again, same exact thing. Once you're into that building, you're into the building. The other thing at Grant that I just hadn't thought about is there's no signage to indicate that that's Grant Elementary School at the front. So we're looking at designating that main entrance to the building, making sure that we're secure, safe, again, key card, cameras, all those secure features. Again, another $2.5 million for that, and then that same design phase. But again, Denny, if we, like I said, if we could flip these design phases very easily.
Yeah, my point is just that I think we need to, get these secure entrances for these elementary schools as quick as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next thing at the high school, I know that we've spent some time on tennis courts. This was another project that is at some point in time we're going to have to do by stripping those completely out and relaying those tennis courts, refencing that. It does look very nice now that those trees are down around the outside. I don't know if anybody's been out there to see that. I think it looks 100% better. But this is again, approximately $1 million project, and we could complete that pretty easily.
And those will go to cement?
Yeah, it'd still be a hard surface playable court, just like it is now. Cement court.
We got asphalt, don't we?
Is it, or asphalt?
So
Asphalt.
It used to be asphalt. I don't know what it is now.
if I remember correctly, that $1 million price tag was to make something that will last approximately 20 to 25 years. What we have right now, we need to resurface about every 3 years.
3 to 4.
But you can extend those out to about 7. But this upgrade would be
This would be a
long-term.
20-year playing surface
Right.
is what we'd be looking at.
without having to do much
Yes,
to it.
very
just maintain
minimal
it.
upkeep.
Yep.
Especially now that those trees are removed, those roots aren't running underneath, and pushing and cracking and causing some water damage to the current courts. So I just wanted to make sure that this doesn't eliminate our the ability to do other summer projects, other things. So as we're looking at that, so Mulberry and Grant's playgrounds are in need of replacement at some point in time in the near future. Additionally, those playgrounds should be ADA compliant. We are not ADA compliant with those two buildings. So we're going to be looking at compliant playgrounds, soft surface playing areas similar to the one at Jefferson. So the kids could play regardless of the weather and regardless of the ability. And then at Franklin, we have some HVAC renovations that we'd be able to do. And so there's just some site improvements that need to be done to that building as well. So this enables us to hit every building, every level, and every aspect: fine arts, athletics, classroom space. So in the end, I think it's a fairly well-rounded proposal. Obviously, there's things that we need to hash out and some details that we need to do yet. But
I could talk a little bit more about, I think it's important to emphasize, we're going to use SAVE dollars. Those are the 1% sales tax funds that were designated by the state. They can only be used for capital facility projects. They can't be used for anything else. They can't be used for salary, for benefits, for any other project. It's got to be on capital facility projects. And if we, again, as we can borrow, or as a board, you have the authority to borrow those out to where the revenue purpose statement is. And right now that's to 2030. The state legislature has approved SAVE dollars out through 2050, okay? But because our revenue purpose statement, and we'll have to renew that, probably in a few years we'll renew that, and all that means is how we're going to spend those dollars through the 2050 timeline. But you can borrow out to that 2030, okay? We know, and you can't maximum borrow, right? You have pieces that you have to pull away. So we may have $30 million that we have the authority to borrow on, but we can only get, I think it's 26 and a half, 27, somewhere in there. That still preserves $1.5 million a year for annual projects, summer projects. So some of these pieces that we're talking about, like the playgrounds, will still be summer projects. The reason we're asking you to borrow those dollars is by doing that, it allows you to get those 7-8 projects done in a short period of time, okay? If we did those one at a time, you might get 2 or 3 done, okay? And again, there's a lot of priorities here. There's a lot of things that it's hitting. And so for us to be able to do that, again, it's a shorter window that you're borrowing. You're borrowing about, by the time things get finished, there'll probably be 5 or 6 years left on that, right? In 29, we can start plans to borrow again, but up until that, we can't. So we are locking in on these projects. I think it also times well with our enrollment, because over those next few years, we'll kind of really see where we're at and what those next phases are. So at some point, whether that's July or August, we'll be coming to you for and asking you to make that approval. We have to hold a public hearing, which we do for any of our facility projects. If you approve it that night, there's a 15-day wait period. Because you're borrowing the save dollars, that 15 days allows the community members, if they want to petition that, they can, okay? And I believe it's 100 signatures would be the minimum that would be required. And then we'd have to put it out to a community vote. That would be a 50% plus 1 vote. That's what would be required. You can't, there's only certain times you could do those specific types of asks to the community. There could be one in September, but the timeline on that would be really tight. So you're probably not out to the community until March of 23, okay? And again, what this does is it allows you to borrow, get those projects done, and it has no impact to our taxpayers in the community at all. We're only borrowing against the revenue. And again, when we look at that revenue, when we look at how much we're borrowing, we're figuring in continued declining enrollment. We're figuring in, they look at all of those pieces. We have an outside firm that does that. So that's where that number comes from. We still have money available year to year for projects as they come up, right? So it's not like we're locking in and nothing will happen over the next 8 years. Things will still happen.
And Clint, this strategy, for lack of a better word, is pretty typical across the state.
Yes.
Especially schools our size, it's pretty typical to borrow against your saved dollars.
Yeah. I would say schools of any
I would say
size,
probably
districts and-
75% of the schools probably do that.
I don't have a
close.
number on that.
That would be a guess, but
It's very common.
I do have one more question. This is your longest presentation ever, isn't it?
Actually, no, that's okay. Keep
Oh, okay.
going.
All right, we'll be here all night. No. So one of the things that's I noticed is maybe missing that we've had community conversations about too, just people bringing up, is that wrestling room at the high school.
Okay, so that's on my summer projects. I didn't include this on here.
Okay. Well, I
but-
want everyone to know
Yeah.
that it's
Yeah.
not forgotten.
That's a
then.
great point, because at the end of this presentation are the playgrounds. There's some HVAC and site improvements at Franklin. And we also, as a facility committee, talked about that wrestling room. All of those fall under that $1.5 million. We could do those in a summer, right? So we have some flexibility on what goes into that group of projects. We also want to make sure, as you know, and I think this goes to why there's some benefit to borrowing now and doing as many projects as we can. We know what interest rates are going to do. We know what's happening with construction costs. Every time we go back out, it gets more expensive to do these things, right? But we can do some of these smaller projects in the summer. The reality is we could do the tennis court over summer, right? We could wait and see. That could be a strategy that then allows us to get something else in there, right? But this is what we have presented right now. And also you'll notice that in the total, we're about 25 million plus architect's fees. When you say plus, that means on top of that or
Correct.
included?
On top of that.
So that's where we get to that. Once you add the architect fees in, is where we get to that maximum borrowing amount. Okay.
At a couple of meetings ago, we talked about a maintenance management group coming on too, or not maintenance, construction.
Construction management.
We approved that, didn't we? Or
You
was
have
that
not
just a
yet,
conversation?
so part of that is when we do that proposal to get bids for that service, we want to include these projects. So we wanted to get these in front of you, so now we can get some of those proposals out, and in July, we hope to have a selection to bring to you for approval. Now, again, what happens with construction management is doesn't necessarily cost you additional money. They take some of the planning work from the architects, so some of that kind of comes out in the wash a little bit. And there's some different ways to do construction management as we do this process. So that'll be part of that conversation moving forward. What construction management does is help, they work for the district to make sure you come in on time and on budget. You want them at the table as you're talking about your planning and drawings and all of those things. They're the ones that are on site working with contractors to make sure things are getting done. As change orders happen, they're the ones that are working through that process. So that's where you start to see the benefit of construction management.
And that's where we talked, I think, before about then takes a little bit off of your shoulders, then, is that correct?
Yeah, that would have stopped me from being at 4 different buildings this morning and talking to contractors. And
we're still
not that I still won't be there,
Still
but
gonna
that
do
gives
that.
me another expertise to draw from that's working on our behalf versus just the contractor who's the general on the project.
Understood.
I mean, Ryan doesn't live in the construction world, and neither do I, right? So there's a different knowledge base there and different kind of conversation that happens, and that's the value of them.
So you said that we could potentially borrow out, or there's the ability, right, to 2050. But right now, our revenue purpose statement is only
Correct.
until,
It's-
so and we need to reissue that at some point so that we do every project perfectly, maybe, and really invest where we need to, plus meet that timeline so that it's more economically smart to do it that way. So we're not running into those. Should the board consider maybe renewing that revenue
The first
statement sooner?
time we can renew that will be in November of '23.
So not until.
So that means you'd have to renew that revenue purpose statement, then do your
We'd
so
lose a
all
year.
that does is push all your projects out, 2 to 3 years. So I think and again, when you look at these projects, everything is really based on those priorities, right? Of what the needs that we have right now. These aren't like wish list stuff.
Right.
This is something we need to do now. It's really, for all intents and purposes, a much shorter window of time that we're borrowing. Again, we'll see how some of that enrollment pieces gives us a chance to renew that revenue purpose statement when we see where we're at in 29 and 30, which sounds like a long way off. But when you start, again, it's going to take a couple of years, as you've seen just in in some of these timelines, to get some of this stuff going, right? Some of this may go longer than that.
And the way I see it is that every single project we spoke about tonight is well-needed project. I mean, it is very important, and why break that cycle and every 3 to 4 years do something in case when we have the money that we can borrow and do everything at the same time and move forward after that.
And again, it's still, as I mentioned earlier, we built this on that there is no other additional community support. And there have been some conversations. So, maybe there's some additional dollars that are donated, and that lets us just, again, extend those dollars in other places, right? So we get a little more flexibility. But we have to build a budget assuming none of that happens. And we put these intentionally in priority order, and I agree. I think the secured entrances, and there's a lot of secured entrances throughout this. We move those to make sure those get done, and that way, we know if bids come back, what are the priorities? Where are we at? What are we going to do first? What do we want to make sure gets done?
Yeah, and I guess, and one of those things that, in addition to the secured entrances, I didn't put on our summer project. We're doing cameras right now. We're doing other security type of issues to help district wide to make sure that we're addressing some of those needs.
Well, just to summarize, I think that it's, as long as we are being cautious as in how we utilize those dollars, and we're showing the public that we are, And the fact that they don't have to put any tax dollars, you know, don't have to go out to them to do it, I think it becomes a win-win for everybody.
One other thing, what's the status on the centralized kitchen?
So Centralized Kitchen is,
Well, you do have an item tonight that we're asking you
Okay.
to approve that allows us to reach an agreement with the Ag Center on purchasing 2.5 acres. So once we have that finalized, then we can get rolling on that centralized kitchen, because you're right, that's a great question. That's another piece of the central project that
Right.
needs to happen in order for us to get out of that building.
So where the old central part of it will be torn down, that's not a big enough piece of land to put a centralized kitchen there?
the issue is we can't tear down until we have a replacement for that kitchen right now. So we would be, 12 months without a kitchen facility, and that's just not feasible for us to do.
Good question.
Thanks, Ryan.
Other
Any
questions?
other questions? Well, Ryan, thank you. I mean, that was really a great presentation. As Lindsay mentioned, it's really a lot of information.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you. Moving forward with the agenda, we move into possible action item. The following items are considered to be routine by the Board of Education and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a director so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence from the agenda. The items are minutes, bills and claims, employment recommendations, cooperative agreement with University of Iowa, Unity Healthcare DBA Trinity School Nurse Contract, Unity Healthcare DBA Trinity Navigators Contract, cooperative agreement with Iowa State, cooperative agreement with St. Ambrose, interfund transfer, policies, third reading. What are the wishes of the board?
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay.
The discussion would be, and if I can ask a generalized question on the employment recommendation. And that would be as in when the employees exit, they have an exit interview. And is that exit interview, is that anonymous, or are they required to say who they are?
It's a survey, and so we send it out when we get their resignation, and then they can complete it. I believe that it captures their email address, but we can look at doing whatever will get more responses.
Well, I think that's part of the question, is because it's my understanding that it sometimes is not a very good response area, so that you can get an idea, perhaps a little bit more information as in how or why they left employment. And
Sure.
appreciate that.
Jamie, since you're up here, can I ask you one question too, somewhat related? Sorry. How are you feeling about staffing for next year?
Honestly, I feel we're doing a really good job. We have right now 38 or 39 acceptances already for teacher positions, one more pending right now, and we're down to right about 20 openings, with the majority of them being at our elementary level.
Of certified positions?
Yes, of teacher positions. From what I've gathered from the other UEN directors in the state, we are faring very well compared to some of them. Other districts our size, like Marshalltown, they're right now sitting at about 50 openings and very few hires. other districts a little bit bigger than us just started posting for jobs. So we jumped early and we got some really great candidates coming in. So I think that we're doing a much better job being proactive than some of our friends around the area. We've just been lucky. So we've been out there pounding the pavement.
Good job.
And am I assuming that it's still the harder one in which to get is the SPED, some of those teachers to help out?
Right now, it's everything. Quite frankly, I've never seen in all of my years this many elementary openings with this few candidates. We're all pretty much vying for the same pool of people. 20 years ago, you would have had 100 candidates for a grade level position, and now we have 2 or 3. And so it's just trying to find where folks are and going to them instead of expecting them to come to us. So we've been really trying to work on that. Special ed always is going to be an issue in the state of Iowa just because of the licensure requirements for getting those endorsements. But that's not been our big issue this year. It's really filling those elementary grade level positions.
And again, that's a issue that every district is dealing with. As I talk with superintendents and Jamie's talking with HR directors, it's all the same issue. And that's every district. That's Pleasant Valley, Bettendorf, North Scott, all of them are struggling to fill or getting very few candidates for the positions that they have open. So.
And contracts were out early this year, so that's great.
They were. So my team really hustled and they got them out 2 days after you guys approved the package. So we were really, really early on getting those so we could start that 21-day clock on signing contracts and getting people locked in for next year.
And we've seen the news where people are leaving teaching positions in large quantities, right? So for retainment, how did those contracts come back signed? Was it?
I think we're missing like 3 or 4, and it's just because these are, I'm guessing, the ones that are kind of always a little bit slow on the getting in and signing them electronically. But like we've got almost all of them in, and I just read an article that there's a district in Iowa that saw 140 teacher resignations this year, and one of our largest districts in Iowa saw almost 500. So we are doing a lot of good things to retain people, and we just need to keep pushing through on those types of initiatives.
How are we doing for the different type of staff, like bus drivers and some of the other, food service staff and stuff like that?
We're always actively recruiting. So we had an in-house job fair in April, and it didn't garner a lot of people in, but the 5 or 6 people that showed up, we've offered jobs and pursued hiring all of them. So right now with bus drivers, it's a challenge because of the new DOT requirements in even getting them to be able to be a driver and getting their CDL. I might be driving a bus later. But we are trying to be proactive in those areas too and making sure we've got enough people in place. My team has done a phenomenal job of taking some of that off the principal's shoulders and doing some of the legwork on going ahead and screening applicants and doing some phone interviews so that we can really address those shortages that we've got.
So the drivers are there. I just remember something about there's a different type of pays if they're considered a.
Yeah, there's a pay structure that they negotiated. So we have to follow what's in their negotiated agreement. They are part of the AFSCME union. And so there are different pay rates for different types of work, whether it's driving regular routes, driving activity routes, or training time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Great information. Okay, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda, can you please signify by saying aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Well, moving forward with our agenda, we move to item L, approve the FY23 general fee structure. What are the wishes of the board?
I'll move to approve the fee structure.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving the FY23 general fee structure, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Next item. Item M, approve the purchase of the MHS Student Center furniture in the amount of $128,351.81. What are the wishes of the board?
Are you gonna say something, Ryan?
Just making sure nobody had any questions.
Well, they'll,
Not yet.
a
I make a
second
motion to approve the Student Center furniture for $128,351.81.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
What have we, since I guess their engineers were involved in this, has Hahn given us any kind of a break on?
So it all
Can I-
comes, well, I'll let Ryan talk about how that,
So yes, this is the project that our students and Hahn worked jointly together with to create the two plans. After they presented their two plans, I took it back and we met with our furniture distributor to kind of merge the two plans together, took that back to the students for their last little feedback, and then sent it in to our distributor to do that. So yes, the furniture distributor works directly with Hahn to source our prices for us.
Okay.
there is a discount on
Yeah.
that.
Is this about what we expected?
Yeah,
mean,
very
it's-
similar to what we expected.
Good lead time or delivery time on this?
No issues.
The upholstery colors sound delicious. Just blackberry.
No, and the kids were like, when we met with the furniture distributor, the kids were extremely excited that they were able to see those 3D renderings of what they're working with, and it was a really good experience for them, not only to work with Hahn, but then again with our distributor to see the other end of it as well.
And we would have had them here tonight to present to you, but a lot of kids, I guess in the summer, they do a lot of stuff and go on vacation. And so in August, we'll, and talking with Brandon Welsh, who really kind of helped coordinate some of this from the high school end, felt like August would be a better time to get them back here. But we do want to get them in front of you to share their experience, because it was a pretty neat opportunity for them, as well as for the folks at H&I.
Any more questions for Ryan? Okay, thank you, Ryan. Okay, all those in favor of approving the purchase of the MHS Student Center furniture in the amount of $128,351.81, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Moving forward to next item, item N, approve the purchase of computers for staff in the amount of $431,603.
I make a motion to approve the computers for staff for the amount of $431,603.
Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Any discussion?
So Scott, is this roughly, it looks like that's everybody? So,
Yeah, so basically, I'll give you a little history.
Okay.
In 2012, we did our first staff purchase of computers. We kept those for 5 years. In 2017, we purchased again, same quantity approximately, give or take. And we just are finishing up that same 5-year schedule. So we're at the point now where all the staff machines are about 5 years old. Actually, they're exactly 5 years old. And what we're proposing is that since we have ESSER funds, we're going to go ahead and suggest replacing all those one more time. And then our goal is that in 3 years, we'll start a replacement cycle where we'll divide that in probably thirds. So we'll look at maybe our elementary staff, middle school staff, high school staff, and we'll replace those in a way that we're not going past that 5 years of the stuff that we're purchasing today. So that at that point, going forward, when we don't have things like ESSER dollars, we'll be able to replace, a smaller quantity at a time for a less impact on the overall budget.
great, thank you.
does that help your group out too, or does that make it more difficult having 3 years of 3 different styles of laptop?
You know, that's been one nice thing about having the same type of laptop, but over the history of doing this, we haven't seen that many changes in hardware that we don't think it's going to be an issue. We don't foresee that. But that's a really good question, because my own staff, you know, we talked a lot about that, what that might look like.
Right.
And can you remind me what happens to the computers that you are replacing?
That's a great question. So each time we've replaced our staff computers, we typically, like we always do, we look at what we have, what they come in terms of the condition. We typically keep some for specialized purposes. Sometimes we have classrooms that use them with students that needed a newer model for students for a special maybe art type thing or something else that these devices may work well. And then we sell the rest in bulk to the highest bidder. So last time, like that's one nice thing about these Apple devices, even after 5 years, we still got, you know, somewhere around $220 to $240 a piece, which was great. It was a great way to recoup some of that investment.
And you should be able
Of course,
to.
if we do that, then it's scrubbed or whatever you call it. so
That's
to make
correct. Yeah,
sure
we
that-
erase all the drives and get them all, you know, depersonalized or whatever.
Absolutely.
As you move to your new plan, they should have higher value in 3 years as opposed to 5 years.
Right,
So-
and after that, and we'll drop it down to 4-year replacement at that
Right.
point at a smaller amount. But you're right, we'll see a better value for those investments. Any other questions?
Thank you, Scott.
This is like, by the way, my favorite time of my job, because you know our teachers work really hard, so they really enjoy getting a new device that's going to make their jobs better. So it's always a good thing.
Indeed. Thank you, Scott.
Well,
Thank
one other question, just
Oh.
real quick on that. Out of the 5 years, all of them, how much lasted the 5 years? 90%? Higher?
Our damage rate on staff devices is like considerably less than students, of course, but we still have, you know, we lose some due to accidental water damage. The aluminum structure of those devices tend to last better. So by the time 5 years is up, we get a lot of bent corners or dents on the top case, but typically the devices still work. And if we break a screen, we forget that fixed. So they usually last a little bit longer.
Thank you. Any other question?
I guess it would be more on, because I see like that the Chromebooks could have been purchased through Dell and SH or something like that. So is this a place that we normally then get them from, or
For the Chromebooks?
from
or
the
s-
Blue? Yeah, Blue.
So the next
That's the next
discussion,
one.
that'll be our next
Oh, that's the
item.
next
Yep.
one. I apologize.
I'm going to hang out right here.
It's me.
So you're expecting some questions, right?
I always go ahead.
Okay. All those in favor of approving the purchase of computers for staff in the amount of $431,603, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay, thank you. Motion carried. We move to item O, approve the purchase of Chromebooks for students in the amount of $446,634. What are the wishes of the board?
I'll make the motion to approve the purchase of Chromebooks for students for the amount of $446,634.
Second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and second, and now any discussion?
All right.
To that.
So this is last year. So we've been buying these every year for quite a while, but last year we specifically set up a rotation where we're purchasing Chromebooks every year for second grade, sixth grade, and ninth grade. This year we're replacing them as well for first grade. The difference is second, sixth, and ninth grade keep those Chromebooks and it goes with them from grade to grade, right? For first grade, we're going to replace them, and then they're going to keep those in their classroom in a classroom set for that same 4-year period. But instead of them moving on, they'll just keep them right there. It works a little bit better for them because of the way that they use their devices, and so we decided to honor that. That's the biggest difference in terms of quantity. Next year, it would go back down to, well, actually, next year we may look at kindergarten, but after that, it would be back down to second, sixth, and ninth grade for 4 years.
Is this the first year that first grade is using the Chromebooks
Yeah, so
as well?
first grade used iPads
Right.
previous to this. This will be their first year going to Chromebooks. There's a lot of reasons for doing that cost-wise, but we also talked to our first grade teachers about what they wanted to do, and they were ready to move on to Chromebooks. And I think, you know, like I said, we'll be talking to kindergarten and seeing if they want to do that or stick with what they're doing now. because it is different. My wife is a kindergarten teacher, and so there's definitely a learning curve when it comes. This is such a geek thing to talk about real quick, but my kindergarten teacher wife told me about this, which I never would have saw. Apple devices, if you look at your keyboard, the keyboard is in all uppercase. On a Chromebook, the keys are in lowercase. And when you're teaching letters, that's a pretty substantial difference because they start off the year doing uppercase characters. And so there's just that added challenge to kindergarten teachers to like help students learn their logins and passwords. So it's just interesting thing that I would never have noticed.
So I guess I have a question too. Since we're spending this amount of money for our students to use this, are we teaching them the proper way to use these, or are they using a pencil and an eraser to push the buttons, the keys? You can't answer that, or maybe you can.
No, I mean, that's a great question. You're right.
Keyboarding a little early.
Any answers?
And I think that, the emphasis on keyboarding, obviously, Denny, you taught keyboarding for many years, and so that's something you're very well aware of. And I know that for all those years I walked past your classroom, I have a great appreciation for the skills you drove into our students. And I know for myself that was something that I took as a high school student when I just had a typewriter. Unfortunately, I'm at that age, right? Didn't have computers. So, and I know what a valuable skill that was. So I think now, our teachers are trying to move that in. And a lot of times when students finish coursework that they don't have something else to do, there's several online typing curriculums that they'll allow them to do that have a little bit gamification to try to keep their interest. It's not quite as good as a dedicated teacher, but I think they're trying to work that in more.
Yeah, I just don't want to, I know our elementary teachers are taxed right now, or just don't want to put anything more on them.
Right.
But I also think that's an important skill, since we are investing in them next students, that I think it's an important skill to use them efficiently, because they are going to be using those for entering information in, so.
Yep.
It's got one question on the bid here. I see Bloom had the 4-year accidental damage, and the others says it's not included. Do they have the opportunity to include that, or what's the difference?
They
there?
do. So those two vendors, so actually Dell, they always have included it before. I'm not sure. They have a new representative, and I don't know if she just didn't understand how to answer the quote. But yeah, all three vendors are actually, I think we sent them out to about 5 vendors. They all had the same language, the same ask. But for whatever reason, those 2 vendors chose not to include accidental damage.
And that coverage, I'm assuming since we're taking Bloom, it's not just on the 303, that additional 100,000, probably similar for Dell and SHI, but something you want included
Exactly.
in your purchase? Yeah.
Yeah, it's really important. It's something that we started doing probably 5 years ago when the accidental damage. Those plans allow for unlimited device returns, so without any additional cost. So it breaks down to it's about $76 a device, or over the course of 4 years, about $19 a device. So it's a pretty decent. In the past, before that, we actually looked at buying insurance from our district insurance provider, and this turned out to be a much more affordable option.
Do you have a rough idea of annually how many returns we would have?
Yeah, there's probably, I'm just going to guess without, and I shouldn't, but it's probably 300 to 400. And that number has probably gone down a little bit since the warranty provider, one of the things we always wondered was, if you're going to include a warranty like this as a provider, why wouldn't you include a case or a cover for the device to try to make the screen a little bit more rigid? So 2 years ago, they started doing that. So since then, we've seen fewer screens get broke. Right. So we were pleased to see that, and that's at no cost. It's at no cost with that.
Any other question for Scott? Okay, thank you, Scott. All those in favor of approving the purchase of Chromebooks for students in the amount of $446,634, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Nay. Okay. Motion carried. Thank you. Moving forward, approve the purchase of 2.5 acres from Muscatine Agricultural Learning Center in the amount of no more than $88,000 for the Centralized Kitchen. What are the wishes of the board?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the purchase of the 2.3 acres for the no more than the 88,000 for the centralized kitchen, please.
2.5.
2.5, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So we have a motion. Any second?
Second.
Okay. So we have a motion and second. Any discussion?
So I'll just real quickly update you on this. As you know, this is a site we've been looking at the Ag Center. The Ag Center is a joint venture between the Friends of FFA, Muscatine Community College, and the school district. We have representation on the Ag Center board. Karen sits on that board, as do I. The conversation came up as we were looking for space. Could we purchase some acres from the Ag Center? And essentially what you're approving here is to allow us to negotiate an agreement that's no more than 88,000. What we did as an Ag Center board is we had it independently appraised. This was the number that came back. So it was kind of a fair independent appraisal that said this would be the right amount for that space. We've talked about that, and there was some agreement on that. After this approval tonight, we'll hold another special meeting of the Ag Center board. We can talk about, and we'll bring to them a purchase agreement for them to respond to, and we'll move forward. We have to have this finished before we can finalize the plans for the centralized kitchen and get that out to bid. So we're trying to get this done as expeditiously as possible. I do think it's a great site that does allow for some additional, I think, learning opportunities for the Ag Center students as well.
And we've had conversations with the city already, so there should be no holdup.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
What is the zoning of this acreage right now? So
It's a mixed
$88,000 is a lot per acre?
Correct. It is a mixed use, so it is compared to other mixed use in Muscatine. So
Do we have to rezone then when we're done and like
it allows us
specify
to
something, or
still,
it's just
because it's
whatever?
mixed use, it allows you to do both. So,
City
I
sewers
think it's
there
a good.
yes,
and
good-
water.
oh,
correct.
It's a good and reasonable working agreement, I believe, with everybody, because, like he mentioned, MCC as well as FFA and as us have worked together all good in the past. And so this will be something that we will able to continue to do with Naomi DeWinter is also on the board, and she, would also like to be able to see what kind of possible internships or anything that we can take and do, even through the high school, what we might be able to do to have the kids work with different phases of not only maybe with the construction, but afterwards, with the food service. So on a whole, I think it's a good choice for us to do.
Any other question? Okay, all those in favor of approving the purchase of 2.5 acres from Muscatine Agricultural Learning Center in the amount of no more than $88,000 for the centralized kitchen, please signify by saying aye.
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 Oppose? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Moving forward with our agenda, the next item is, or the next section on our agenda comes under discussion and information. And the first item, item A, the second reading on policy 501.4 grade placement. Any question about that? And please, if any of you have any question, any edits, please connect with Daphne on this also after the meeting, not necessarily just during the meeting. If not, we move forward with our agenda items. Item B, the April 2022 financials. As you see, Tom is on vacation. He's not with us tonight, and all of us has the financial report. So what I would suggest, if most probably any of us have any question, to connect with Tom for any question verifications or anything that we might have. I don't know if anybody have any quick question that I don't know if Clint can answer, or, but if not, I mean, make sure, feel free to connect with Tom, please, on any question. Any question? Okay, item C, announcement, meetings and events. June 6th to August 5th, 2022, Summer Food Service Meal Program. June 14th, which is tomorrow, Riverbend Food Pantry, 4:30 to 6 p.m. at the Administration Center. I do encourage all of you as board members to perhaps maybe take on some months and participate. Is a lot of fun. A lot of fun to be there, a lot of fun to help and serve during those hours. June 13 to June 30th, Susan Clark Junior High Summer School. June 20th to June 30th, Muscatine High School Summer School. June 21st to July 22nd, Spark at Jefferson School. July 11th, regular board meeting at 7 p.m. here at the City Hall. Do we have any motion to adjourn?
I would just make a note that there was a couple folks that thought there was the discussion beforehand meeting still on the schedule and tried to show up. And so just as a reminder that next time we do not have one, but we will look to pick that back up in August.
We are hoping to have the community conversation back again in August. Yeah.
Well, our apologies if we didn't communicate that very well either then, I think it's fair to say. So, sorry about that.
Any other question before we have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the night. Thank you.